Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in just a few moments. First, I'm going to introduce myself if you don't know me. I'm Brian Edwards. I'm the manager here at the Albany Library. I just want to let everybody know that the library is going through The library is going through a facilities master plan right now. What that means is they're looking at the next 10 to 20 years of the future of the library. So there's a community meeting that if you want input on what you want to see in this library and Alameda County in general, it's going to be after the Library Advisory Board, which is March 15th at 7:30 p.m. With that, I welcome all of you here, and I'd like to introduce Mary D'Elia, who's actually from the Albany Y, and most of you probably know her. But thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Brown Bag Speakers Forum. So happy that you could make it on this beautiful, gray, rainy day. More rain, yay. I wanted to just say that we are being recorded, and this will be on YouTube or available on KALB, which is the local Albany, what's that called? Cable TV. Thank you. Local cable. So it will be available. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask Jeremy at the end, and he'll let you know when you can watch it, if you want to watch it again, or if you want to direct others to it. I'm very excited about today's presenter. But before I talk about her, I just want to bring you up to speed about what's happening next month. So next month, we have Lawrence Rinder, who is the executive director of the new Berkeley Arts Museum and PFA, will be coming to speak about the inaugural installation called Architecture of Life. So that will be on April 11th here, 12:30. You can bring your lunch, you can bring your friends, you can come. It's free and open to the public, so it should be a really great presentation to find out about the museum, about the architecture of the museum, but also about the very special installation that is there right now. And if you haven't been to that museum, it's a treasure and a gem in this community, and also the Pacific Archive. Just amazing. So we're really lucky to have that, and really happy to have him come and talk about that. There's flyers in the back, if you wanted to take one just to put up on your refrigerator. So today's speaker and presenter is someone I've known for many years. Her name is Barbara Hazard, and she's a member of the Albany Y, which I always love to start with that, the Y, great Albany community here. And obviously she has been a member of one of our classes for many years, but she's also an artist. And somebody mentioned to me, because she didn't tell me herself, somebody said, you know, Barbara is an amazing artist. You really should have her come and speak at the Brown Bag. That was a couple years ago. And then one day we were engaged in conversation, and she started telling me about what she was actually doing, and I just found it fascinating. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction and let her go on from there. Barbara has spent an average of 2 months a year in Russia since 1983, mostly in Leningrad and St. Petersburg. She came to know the Leningrad independent artist community in the mid-'80s, when together with Sergei Kovalevsky, she curated an exchange of exhibitions between Gallery Route 1, which is in Point Reyes, and the Independent Fellowship for Experimental Fine Arts in Leningrad. She has some books for sale, which you can purchase at the end, and her assistant Paloma will be happy to help you with that. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce and welcome Barbara Hazard. Come on up, Barbara.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. Oh, don't walk away with my notes. Okay, thank you. Not so good. Okay, is this okay? Am I in the right position with this microphone? So this whole adventure started in 1983. I had been, I had been leading workshops about the nuclear threat, and everything was terrible between Reagan and Brezhnev, I guess it was at that point. And so I was invited to go to Russia on a kind of a peace trip by psychologists with the Association for Humanistic Psychology. And at first I said, no, I don't like travel, I don't like going places where I don't know the language and so forth. But my friend Benina said that she wanted to go, and she would be my roommate, and that was all it took. So I went, and I had a great time, and I was the only one on the trip who had actually learned the alphabet. And I could say, please, thank you, how are you, and where's the bathroom? So I was in great shape, and I had a wonderful time. And I went back, and I started studying the language. So I kept going with the Association for Humanistic Psychology for a couple of years, and then one day I was at Gallery Route 1, and they were having a show of Hungarian work, and they were so pleased with themselves that they had arranged this international show. And I said, well, you guys ought to have an exchange with Russia. And they said, well, could we do that? And I said, I have no idea. And they said, well, why don't you find out on your next trip? Can we do this? And so they wrote a letter of invitation to 21 artists to exchange with them, because there were 21 members of Gallery Route 1, and sent me off in 1986. I had met a couple of artists, but not really very many in Leningrad. I decided to do it in Leningrad because I felt at home in that city, and Moscow was too overwhelming for me. So anyway, I arrived in 1986 in the fall with this invitation from Gallery Route 1 to have an exchange of exhibitions. And they were my friend Alex introduced me to Sergei. And he said, Sergei knows everything. He knows all about who is who. He's the head of the Unofficial Artists Union. And so it turns out that at that time, the artists who were not members of the Artists Union had formed a little union of their own. And I would like to read you what the situation was for the unofficial artists. In the Soviet Union at that time, in order to be recognized as a professional artist, one had to belong to the union. This involved graduation from an approved institute of art and certification by a union committee. Membership carried certain privileges and opportunities we take for granted in America: permission to rent studio space, to buy art supplies at union stores, which was the only place you could really get them, to show work, and to sell it. Without these permissions, an artist had to work at home or on the sly in basements, attics, or condemned buildings, and buy paints at general stores where the supply was always short. According to Soviet law, unofficial artists could not call themselves professional, no matter how much time they actually spent on their art or how good their art was. Unlike union artists who received commissions from the state and could work full-time on their art, the unofficials were forced by law to work at a regular job for bread and to do their art in their free time. So it was really important that they had support from each other in this union that they had formed. And the union would apply frequently for permission to have a show, and often they would get turned down. But it was beginning there in 1986 because it was now under Gorbachev, and it was clear that some changes were coming. That they were allowed occasionally to have a show, and these shows would be censored, so that they would hang the show, and then the censor committee would come in and walk around and say, not that one, no, you can't show these, it's too religious, or it's sexual, or it's not in a good style, it's too modern. So when I came with this idea of having an exchange, part of the excitement was that if they could get their work out and it could be recognized as good art someplace else, like America, and if they could have a brochure that testified that they had done this, they might have a chance of getting defined as professional artists in their own country. So I will show you now some photographs of the guys that I got to know. I'll give you a little context. This is the, what is this, Irina? The Church on the Blood? Yeah, yes, the Church on the Blood, erected after one of their czars was killed driving in his carriage.
This is Leningrad?
This is Leningrad.
Okay.
This is Leningrad. It didn't look that good then because they were fixing it up, and they had scaffolding over it, and they had scaffolding over it for probably 20 years before they finally took it off, maybe 5-10 years ago. This is what it's like in the wintertime. This is more contemporary wintertime. This is the edge of the Hermitage, and they have sculptures all around the top, and they box them off in the winter so that, I guess, so that the snow doesn't damage them. Okay, so my friend Alex, who is on the left, who speaks very good English, he said, I will introduce you to Sergei. So he took me to Sergei's apartment. And this is Alex's wife, and this is Sergei in the red sweater. I don't have photographs of them because I gave them all to the Hoover Institute at Stanford, which was perhaps a mistake, but I did it. So this is Sergei again, bundled up. And here he is making phone calls in what is now a archaic structure. What? These are mine. My paintings, yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So Sergei and I started, he was taking me all around St. Petersburg. We'd go on the metro, we'd walk, take buses, and take a look at art. And I was choosing, we were having arguments about whether what I thought was good art was what he thought was good art, and whether I understood what the artist was trying to do, and so forth. But anyway, we trucked around. This is what Sergei was doing. He was working in his one-room apartment. He'd set up a barrier in the middle of it. And this painting is called, let's see, I think this is the homage to Rodchenko. But he was doing some paintings about the repressed artists of his own country, because most of the art from the teens and the 20s that was radical had been put in the basements of museums and so forth and was not being shown. So it's hard for the artists there, contemporary artists, to even see what had been done in their own country. So this is part of a triptych. This is another part of the triptych. So this is Ladishki, Ladishki. It's a nursery rhyme. Where have you been? Okay, this is one of the other guys that took me around, Yul Rivakov. He has a very interesting history. He was an artist, but he had to work as a stove tender for one of the buildings in the city. He had gotten in trouble because he was stealing paper, like typing paper, in order to put out what they call samizdat literature. So they would get hold of a book by somebody in the West or somebody like Solzhenitsyn, who was forbidden, and then they'd type it up, and they'd type with maybe 10 copies with carbon paper, and put them together and distribute them. And this is how people were reading the literature. Anyway, one evening, he and a friend were upset that an outdoor show they had put together to honor an artist who had been killed in a fire that they think was probably set on purpose. He and his friend went and wrote on the walls of St. Peter and Paul Fortress, "You can crucify man, but the soul knows no nails." And it was in big letters. And the officials didn't like this. So he and his friend and the 2 women who helped them were all arrested. The guys said that they had done everything and that the women were innocent and didn't know what they were doing. So they were sentenced to 6 years in prison camps and went off to saw wood and chop things down and do whatever horrible things they do in Siberia. So this is part of a triptych that he wound up sending this. The show did happen, and he wound up sending this triptych. And I'm not going to read you what he wrote about it, but it's in the brochure back there. A couple of other artists who, the one on the right, Timur, was the head of his own little group of artists, and they called themselves the New Wilds, because they would do things on found objects, and it was pretty radical stuff. And so, of course, the union didn't like it.
Whose painting is this?
It's my painting.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. And this is Elena Figurina. It was hard to find women artists. When I first got there and I said that we would like to have the exchange be half and half women, they laughed at me. It was all guys who met me at the first meeting, and they all seemed to have on brown sweaters too, but they said, well, what difference does it make if an artist is a man or a woman? You must just look at the art. Is it good art or is it not good art? That's the important thing. And we don't look at to see if somebody is a woman when we look at a painting. And so I tried to explain that was part of the problem. But it wasn't until I had been there for quite a while that they actually took me to meet Yelena. And she was the only woman who was allowed to be, she was part of the leadership of this group, the Tovarishistva. But she said they didn't listen to her. And she was full of anger about it. But she's, I think, a really great painter. So I'll show you some of her work. This is her studio. Just one, because nobody had much space. This is called Return of the Prodigal Son, which seems to be a theme that I've seen often in Russian paintings. This is Jacob wrestling with the angel, which in those times was a radical thing to do in itself, because still under communism, you weren't supposed to be religious. And so to be painting, which they would call religious, was a little suspect.
Would these get displayed, Barbara? I mean,
Because
it's a religious topic, would they ever display them?
They did, and you know, sometimes the artist lied about what they were about and said, no, no, it wasn't a religious painting at all. Sometimes the you know, the censors were lenient, and sometimes they were just stupid. And our guys had the feeling that most of the censors didn't know anything about art at all, and they could pull the wool over their eyes very easily. She's not. No, no. Okay, I think I'll move on then in time. We did arrange the exchange, and Gallery Route 1 went back the following year. The show was in 1988, and 1990, 9 members of Gallery Route 1, is that right, 9? Something like that, went to St. Petersburg and had a show there. So it was... Gallery Route 1 is in Point Reyes Station, and I felt a little embarrassed to be organizing a show between the city of Leningrad and Point Reyes Station. And I would explain to the guys, you know, this is really a small town, sort of a weekend place for many people, and you know, it's not we don't care. It's all right. It's in America, right? It's sort of near San Francisco. It's fine, Barbara. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So they were very supportive, and we were trucking all over to Moscow and back trying to get permissions. But we finally, by a combination of permissions and finagling and a little bit of legerdemain, a little bit of taking things out under the arm, we pulled off the show. 1990s, everything changed. Perestroika was in. They were ready to change the name of the city from Leningrad to St. Petersburg. Everything was opening up, and gallery owners from Europe and from America and probably from Japan were coming in and really creaming off the best of the work. And because the artists had no idea how much anything cost, they would be happy with getting $200 for a painting that now would sell for thousands. But it was very exciting, and they began to get permission to travel. So it was just time when they felt everything is going to change for us. It's going to be, you know, wonderful. We'll be recognized as artists, and indeed, the gallery people who came through were much more interested in the unofficial artists in whatever city, St. Petersburg or Moscow or wherever, because they were doing more interesting work. I would go to these annual union shows, and they were so boring. I complained to a Russian friend once, and he said the best way to go to these shows is on a bicycle, and just go through fast. Yeah. So in the 1990s, there was a lot of immigration too. People not only traveled, but they started leaving, and all of the Jewish artists that I chose for our show emigrated, every one of them. I remember the one, well, because there was still anti-Semitism, and their kids were being picked on in school, and so this one couple whose children had been bullied in school took them out of school, homeschooled them, and got permission to go to Holland. So the big thing that happened for the artists who remained was that a building downtown in St. Petersburg came available, sort of. It's right in the center of town. It's right across from the Moscow Railroad Station. There are 3 subway intersections or stations right around it. And it was an old building, 7 stories high, with a huge courtyard. And the city had decided that it needed renovation and kicked most of the residents out. There were a few who were still staying there. But then they realized, well, wait a minute, this building is going to be up for vandalism if we don't do something about it, so we better get somebody in to guard it. And who but Sergei decided, well, maybe we could be the guards. So the artists began to move into this building. Actually, the city had hired an organization called the Guardians, but they didn't know quite how to manage this, and it was such a big building that they turned it pretty much over to Sergei to populate this enormous building. And so here were studios of 5-6 rooms, running water, no hot water, but at least the water ran and the electricity was on. And so I would say probably 80 artists moved in. And so, you know, some in this hallway, some in that. They could choose wherever they wanted to work. And they started to work big, and they started to experiment. It was possible to get art supplies now, so that they were, they were really feeling as if the world is opening up to us. The building, there was about a 5-year argument over, could the artists continue to use this building? The artists wanted the whole building. What they finally settled for was the back half of the building, and that the city would renovate that part for them as the way, however they wanted it, with studios and room for museums and so forth, or and the front section would be luxury apartments. So there is now a barrier between these two sections, because the people in the luxury apartments don't like the kind of horsing around that the artists do, and their festivals that they have at the drop of a hat. But what it means is, I don't really know how many artists have studios in this building, but it's 7 stories. I would say there are 6, probably at least 10 apartments on each story. So, there are many artists there. I kept going back. We had gotten to be such good friends during the adventures we had trying to get the work out for the exchange with Gallery Route 1, that we really had come to love each other. So when the building went up, they offered me a studio, and I took it. So I now have a studio on the 6th floor right underneath Sergei, who has the prize studio, of course. And right across from Zhenya Arloff and Yule, and is in another part of the building. So I'm still there, and I can stay in my studio. I also had made a deal with Sergei for an apartment. So I got an apartment for $6,000, and still have it. So it's now finally legitimate. The city itself cleaned itself up, changed its name to St. Petersburg. But what began to happen was that the artists, the European and American gallery owners had creamed off the best of the art, and they weren't interested in it anymore. So some other place was interested. Okay, so I'll show you some of that, and then I'll talk about Putin, if I can remember how to do this. Okay, so this is the building. This is the entrance. You go through this sort of garbagey tunnel, and then you come out to this entryway, and there are 7 stories up above that. Here's Zhenya Orlov and Yule, contemporary, Sergei, and this is a festival that they're having in this yard. They celebrate the acquisition of the building every year, the last Saturday in June. So this is the kind of crowd that shows up. And this was a year, probably 3-4 years ago. I can't remember how long ago, 3-4 years. And this is Matveeva, who was the mayor at the time. And she had come to announce that she was giving the building a grant, which was a great thing. I don't think they've gotten a grant since, but they still... What the deal with the building is, the city, thanks to Yule, who really fought for this, the city said they would give the artist the lease on the building for 49 years, but they would have to pay utilities and taxes. So, which is significant on a building that big. So it's always nip and tuck. So any kind of a grant is greatly appreciated. Yule and Zhenya, they always float these black balloons at their festival. And this is Sergei and me and Zhenya. Zhenya is now, he's the curator of the museum. Sergei has been running the whole thing until recently, and now he's retired. He says he's just going to work on his own work.
What does his T-shirt say?
I don't know. It's in Finnish or something. That's definitely not Russian. Does anybody know what it says? No. This is the Russians know how to have an opening of an art show. I mean, they have wine and all kinds of great food. They give speeches. Somebody announces who it is. They have usually a curator who gives a speech about why this is great art, and then the artist says something, and then everybody claps and goes to drink. So it's very festive as compared with the kind of openings that we have for artists here. Yeah. They have in the building, they have 4 museums, a music hall, a cafe, another cafe down below. They used to have a bookstore, but they closed that and tried to open up a nightclub, but it doesn't seem to be going very well. Okay, so this is Sergei's studio in his new seventh, I mean not new because they've been there for 25 years now, but in his seventh floor place. His work is almost all about music. He paints to music, and if he's doing a Stockhausen painting, why, he listens to Stockhausen forever and ever and ever. And but a lot of it is based on jazz, Miles Davis. I found this in my slides, and I've never seen this piece, and I can't figure out quite what it is. But
Whose work is that?
this is Sergei's work.
Oh, okay.
This is Yule's work. Yule had always been very political, and after his 6-year term in Siberia, he came back and continued to be something of an agitator, and he was elected to the Duma when under Gorbachev. I guess he served for a while as a representative of his district in St. Petersburg, but then went to Moscow and served, I don't know how many years, maybe 10 years there, and has now retired from that. He and Sergei have always liked to run things together, so they have been running the building until recently when they both tried to retire. So Sergei has been successful in retiring. I think Yule has not been successful. This is a close-up of this piece. There was another piece that I couldn't find my photo of that Yule put in that was very controversial. It was a pistol mounted on some kind of a frame, and it was pointing at an egg sitting in a nest. And there was a lot of controversy about that. People wanted to know, what he was upset about, and people said that it wasn't okay to have a pistol, even though it didn't have any bullets in it, in a show where anybody might steal it, and so forth. So, Yelena has been having a rough time. That her partner Valentine has been ill lately, and she hasn't done very much painting. But this is Valentine. Oh, this is Sergei in my studio. I'm not sure how he got in this here, but whoop, that's it.
Oh, go back to the cats. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so quick.
Uh-huh. Yeah, this is one of my drawings. So, okay, so I'll talk a little about Putin. The artists are concerned because there's been a lot of censorship, beginning censorship, not official, but there have been laws passed that have not, are sometimes lived up to and sometimes not. There's been a restriction by the Duma, which is like their legislative body, in 2012, a restriction on public assemblies. So we have one too. You have to apply for a permit if you're going to have a public meeting. But they are afraid that there may be a restriction about what the meeting is about. 2013, they passed a law criminalizing acts offending religious believers. Well, what religious believers? And which beliefs of theirs? And nobody knows exactly what this means, but it's a way that censors, they shut down a play, I can't remember just what it was, but it was based on a biblical theme, and they shut it down because they said they were interpreting it in the wrong way and that it was offending people. Obscenities, 2014, obscenities are banned in public places, and nobody knows exactly what that means, what constitutes an obscenity. And there's a ban on films that threaten national unity or denigrate its culture. So, Pussy Riot, you've probably heard of Pussy Riot. Well, that's one episode that really scared all the artists because, you just don't know when you're going too far. So it's very difficult to understand what's being censored and what's not being censored and what's okay to do. So I guess I'll just end by saying that most of my guys are still painting. They are worried. They're worried that the lease on the building could be terminated, and things are so difficult financially for them because the ruble has lost so much of its value, like half of its value in just the last year. When I was last there, it was 33 rubles to $1, and now I heard it was 65 rubles to $1. So, yeah, and that's a year, less than a year. So, okay, so I'll open it up for questions. We'll keep the cats up there.
What happened to all the revolutionary art? Is that being shown?
It's being shown, but it's being shown mostly in America.
It's what?
Being shown mostly in America and Europe. The revolutionary art. I
They don't approve of it?
well, most of it left. You see, it left during the 90s. So they're dragging things up from the basements of museums. But the museums really never took much of the really revolutionary stuff. So I would say, I'm not an expert in this, and I'm just shooting from the hip on this, but I think that that much of it is in other countries. Yeah.
However, with the ruble declining, do these artists have access to foreign markets? I mean,
Yeah, if they've managed to make the contacts, if they managed to make contacts when everybody was coming there, and they can travel. So if they have enough money for a ticket, they can go and talk to galleries, in Holland or Germany. Germany is a very good place for many of them, and they really respond to their art, and so a lot of them have succeeded there and here. So.
The artists that live in that sharing that live in this art center building, are they sustaining themselves from the sale of their art, or do they have other income?
The question is, do the artists who work in the building sustain themselves by sale of their art? I would say no. Most of them work at other things. Some of them are okay, but of course they have pensions because they were forced to work at real jobs, like not being artists, for many years. So many of them have a pension. I don't know how much the pension is and how much it would pay for, but it's at least a basis. Yeah.
What percentage of the artists have emigrated?
I have no idea. Out of the 21 that I was dealing with for our show, the 6 Jewish artists emigrated, and I don't know. I don't know about any. I think that was it. So that's 6 out of 21.
And of the 80 who were living in the building, are most of them still there?
Oh yeah. They're still there. I keep saying, you've got to get some young people in. And they say, where? Nobody's dying, you know?
So these are live, work studios?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Do they show
Yeah.
anywhere around here?
Raise your hand because I'm monocular. Kathy.
Are the Russian artists showing anywhere in the Bay Area still?
What's the name of the gallery? What? Mythos. Mythos Gallery has had a whole series of shows of Russian art. And what? Mythos.
They're on Shattuck.
Yeah, on Shattuck. Yeah, yeah. I don't think she has one at the time, but she's had several, and they're good shows.
I think she's had 2.
Only 2?
I think.
I vote for 3. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your drawing up here? It's so charming.
Oh, thank you. It's Craypaw on paper, and it's my fantasy. There are cats all over Russia, as far as I can see, and they love to come out and somehow find their way onto the roofs, and so I'm putting it together. So this is kind of a composite drawing that just drew the way it wanted to. Okay. Yeah. Paloma?
Tell us about your group exhibit now, where you're exhibiting.
Oh, yeah. I'm part of a group exhibit with a group of Marin artists. There are 8 of us in a show at the Marin Civic Center right now, and I have 8 paintings in it, 3 on the ground floor and 5 upstairs on the 3rd floor. So it's quite different than this. Yeah.
Does the Russian government support art?
They used to support art on a limited track. Now they don't have any money, and so my guys feel that there is no support for the arts at all, either in the city government or the national government.
Is there any art in the school system?
Yes, and I've seen shows of children's work there that just breaks my heart. It's so beautiful. It's wonderful. I don't know how. I would love to be a child and learn to paint like those kids. It's just amazing. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
So, are things any better for women artists today? I noticed we kept focusing on this one woman.
Right.
Are there more among this 80?
There are quite a few, actually. Yeah, who are doing well and are included in all the shows and get to have shows in the museum gallery and so forth. So yeah, things. I wouldn't feel too hopeful that they've completely become feminists, but there was. I remember talking with somebody way back when, and I said, well, are you a feminist? And she said, God forbid, we had feminism, and what feminism meant is that we have to go to work, then we have to do the shopping, and then we have to come home and feed everybody and clean everything up. She said, we've had it with feminism. Forget it. So, yeah. But Paloma.
I was just wondering if you would say that now with Putin in power, it's kind of going backwards again for the artists and their opportunities.
I'm afraid so. You know, I don't know enough specifically, but I know that they're concerned now about what's okay to show. And for the guys in the building, one of the difficulties is that if they say they put on a radical show or a show that was criticizing the government or something touchy, they could, the city could say, that's it, guys, you're out. We're going to use this building. It's a beautiful building. It's incredibly valuable. It's right in the center of town. If you overstep the line, too bad. Yeah.
Do you know anything about the Russian cartoon industry?
The Russian cartoon?
Cartoons, they do incredible cartoons.
Yeah, they do incredible. Yeah, we have a good friend.
They seem very different from what you see in American cartoons.
In what way?
They're just different. They're much, some of them are darker, some of them
Mm-hmm.
but they're different than, say, a Disney cartoon. And I'm just wondering if you've ever read anybody that works in that.
Yes. We have a very good friend who does. Victor Bogorod. So, if you have a chance, look up the name Bogorod.
How do you spell it?
Bogorad. Victor. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, Misha.
Are you the only foreign painter in this Russian group?
Yeah. They admitted me as the 140th member to the Tovarishistva back then, when it was this radical group. So yeah, and I get to show in their annual shows. So it's been great for my resume. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you. Oh, I meant to say that I have my book, which describes that whole adventure of organizing the show, and I have a few copies of the brochure that we made for the show back in 1988 for sale, cheap.